Good afternoon. I'm here with Paul Lyons, candidate for Overland Park City Council, Ward 2. On behalf of the Johnson County Public Policy Council, thank you, Paul, for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
The Johnson County Public Policy Council is made up of 10 chambers of commerce in Johnson County. Our goal is to provide information about public policy issues impacting area businesses. You ready to get started?
Let's go.
In regard to economic development, it has been argued that incentives aren't necessary because development will occur naturally without them being offered. What is your opinion?
Well, it's true that Overland Park is one of the very best cities in the whole nation. But I believe that incentives are an important tool for us to use for those types of projects that are the most important to moving our city forward. If we were not to do incentives, it would put us at a competitive disadvantage with other cities in the metro area, and we're also competing with cities across the whole nation. So in my view, most projects that happen in our city, it's only a tiny percent of those that are ever even considered for incentives. Our city staff does an excellent job filtering out project requests for incentives that don't meet our policy guidelines before it even gets to the council. I think the council does a good job going through those incentive requests and picking and choosing the ones that have the best opportunity to address important aspects of strategic goals that the city has. So for example, if there's a project that we know is going to bring in high-paying jobs into our city, those are the kind of projects that we would be looking for. If it's a project that's making improvements to the public infrastructure, so there's a public aspect to this that will benefit from an incentive, then those are ones that we would be considering, as well as those kinds of projects that are going to bring people from around the region that would come into our city to spend money. That could also help in terms of reducing the burden on our residents for property taxes. Ideally, you want people coming from outside to spend their money and to give sales tax to the city that way. So bottom line is, I think we do a good job of managing our incentives, and I think it's an important tool that we should continue to do for the largest, most strategic projects for the city.
Good. What is your opinion on what is commonly referred to as dark store theory? And what do you think Overland Park should be doing, if anything, to prepare for rulings that favor the plaintiffs?
Well, as I understand it, the dark store theory, if it is ultimately implemented, could be a very significant impact to our city in terms of property tax collection from commercial, particularly large big box stores. Our city manager has given us some input that it could end up resulting in potentially increases in the property tax rate for residents. So certainly from that standpoint, I would much prefer to keep the current appraisal process in the place where it is today, and that the dark store theory doesn't actually take place. However, the city manager explained to us that he's already starting to set aside money. When we approve the 2020 budget, there are dollars that are being set aside in the event that the plaintiffs win their lawsuit. But it hasn't even gotten to the courts yet, so we've still got a long way to go. Our city does a 5-year budget horizon. That gives us the opportunity to see what's coming down the road several years, to allow us to take action before it has a detrimental effect on our services to our residents. So I feel pretty good that we are planning ahead, and we are prepared for any eventuality that might occur from the dark store theory.
Housing affordability is addressed in Forward OP, and it's a topic of considerable discussion among employers. What do you think the City of Overland Park should be doing to address this problem?
Well, let me first say that I think the first step is to define what affordable housing is as it relates to Overland Park, and what's the scope of the problem. As I've talked to people about this, everybody has in their mind what they mean by affordable housing. In Overland Park, it just so happens that our city has been recognized nationally as one of the best places for new home buyers to come buy homes. That certainly is a component of affordable housing. We have a relatively robust inventory of rental housing, and the city has been pretty good over the years to allow that rental housing, apartments, complexes to be built that allows that inventory to keep prices for rents down compared to other cities. In cities where they have suppressed that, the rental prices, the rental costs have gone up dramatically, and to the point where where many people can't afford to even rent a home or rent an apartment. But I do recognize that there are the service industry workers that earn the lower wages, that we really need to look at how we would accommodate those individuals in terms of making it good for them to come into our city and work in our service industry. Whether that means that we have to find housing for them to be that's affordable for them within the city of Overland Park, or to find affordable transportation methods for them to get to their jobs in Overland Park, those are all to be determined. So I'm all for investigating this issue and determining the scope of the problem. And once we know that, then we could start looking at what it might take to resolve it.
In the short term, it appears we can keep our mill levy unchanged to meet current budget obligations. However, sluggish sales tax collections and increased demands on infrastructure from growth could necessitate a change. What are your thoughts on our current budget and the outlook for the future?
Well, let me first say that we are in great shape financially in Overland Park. We have an ending fund balance, or I should say reserves, financial reserves, that put us in a position where we can deal with a lot of short-term issues that might come up and not require us to raise the mill levy to accommodate that. However, I recognize that in the long run, as a chairman of the Public Safety Committee, it's very likely we're going to have to increase our investment in public safety. In particular, we've got a fire station that's being built in the southern part of the city. That fire station is due to come online in 2021. It's going to require additional staffing for the firefighters to staff that particular facility. And in addition to that, as the city continues to grow, we're going to hit almost 200,000 people in 2020, and we're growing at an average of 2,000 to 3,000 people a year. We can expect that we're going to need additional police officers to be able to maintain our very safe environment in our city going forward. So I would anticipate that it is possible after the 2020 budget, beginning in 2021, that we may have to look at raising the mill levy more from a public safety perspective than anything else.
Okay. The governors of Kansas and Missouri have recently forged a truce in the so-called economic border war. Do you support their actions, and what impact do you believe their agreement will have on Overland Park?
Yes, I do support their actions. I'm encouraged to see that Kansas and Missouri are cooperating on this particular issue. I think actually Overland Park is in a good position for this agreement. We have a great infrastructure. We have a knowledgeable workforce. We have an environment that's a city that's recognized nationally as being one of the very best. So I think if we can level the playing field between Missouri and Kansas, I think Overland Park is going to be well positioned to be able to take advantage of that. So I see it as a positive for the city of Overland Park.
As we wrap up, tell me why you're seeking public office. What do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponents in the race, making you best suited to serve?
Well, I'd say a couple of things. I've been on the city council now 12 years. I've learned a lot over that period of time. I see myself as a pragmatic person who has no particular ideology. I take each item that we vote on a case-by-case basis, and I make decisions based on what I think is in the best interest of the city. Overland Park is in a great position right now. I feel like I've contributed to the fact that over that last 12 years that our city is now in as good, if not better shape than it has ever been in. We have the unique opportunity to be able to focus on the future. And we've completed what's called Forward OP, strategic plan, looking at what we want our city to be in the next 20 years. I have a lot of ideas of what we can do to implement that plan, and I want to be part of doing that. So I'm asking voters to support me to keep our city moving forward in the direction that we've been in the last 10 years.
Well, Paul, thanks for spending some time with us today, and we wish you the best of luck with this year's election.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.